All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar organized by the European Forum for Urban Security within the framework of the LOUD project. My name is Tatiana Morales, and I am here today with my colleague Pilar de la Torre.
Hello.
We are both project managers at EFUS. So, for those of you who did not attend the first session, just briefly, I would like to mention that we talked about how alternative narratives are important at the local level to prevent discrimination, polarization, and radicalization. We also, Maria told us about the importance of the local communication approach and of the steps that are necessary to build a campaign. And today we will speak about how to design an alternative campaign and create a message that offers a positive alternative to discriminatory speeches. And I would like to introduce now the panelists that some of you already probably know. Maria is a member of the Radicalisation Awareness Network and of its steering committee. She is also a leader of the working group on remembrance of victims of terrorism. And previously, since 2015, she has also worked on assignments as advisor, lecturer, expert consultant, and trainer to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And she currently collaborates with the UN in terrorism prevention, preventing violent extremism, just to mention some of her experiences. So now, without further delay, I will give the floor to Maria. Thank you very much for being with us today. And now, Maria, the floor is yours.
Now, sorry. Okay, I think that you can hear me now. Okay, I was saying that it was sorry for this technical problem. It's okay, we will remember some relevant concepts as I told you before. And these are some of the relevant concepts linked to the LOUD project. So, as we are not only speaking about extremism, violent extremism, we need to analyze the concept of polarization. So polarization is a thought construct based on the us and them identities, where this main narrative is about perceived differences about the others, also using simplistic narratives about the others. It also neglects of the common fields. It also shares negative thoughts about the others and hostility and segregation. So therefore, discrimination, hate speech, xenophobia, intolerance, and hate crimes are manifestations of a polarized society. So, radicalization. Radicalization is a completely different concept. Radicalization is an individual process to adopt extremist political, social, or religious ideas and aspirations. So, this process serves to reject diversity, tolerance, freedom of choice, and also serves to, very important, to legitimize the breaking the rule of law and also legitimize the use of violence. So, which is the relationship between these concepts, between polarization and radicalization? These concepts that are surrounding the extremist and discriminatory speech ideologies, we need to realize that polarization does not necessarily lead to radicalization, and radicalization does not have to result in growing polarization. So, the answer related to this relationship between these two concepts comes from the personal drivers, the personal psychological and social factors of vulnerability that, without any doubt, are easier to be shared in a highly polarized society. So this is the relationship between these two concepts. Going ahead and trying to go deeper into some concepts that we shared in the first webinar, and I thought that they were really interesting to share with you before we go with the other training objectives of the session. we need to have a very, very local approach. We know that effective communication is based on a deep knowledge of the local target audience, of their social, geographical characteristics, but also on a deep knowledge of the communication environment. So in the same way as local extremist narratives, local discriminatory narratives are using the local exposure factor that we spoke about it during the last webinar. So in case you are interested in it, you can have that information also. But as I said, these narratives are using the exposure factor, they are using local content, and are also trying to avoid local resilience. So in the same way, our local alternatives need to have a local approach, need to deliver local content, assessing local vulnerabilities, using local resilience factors, and of course, using local voices. So how to counter these narratives? That's in which way, which is the approach that we could use. In this case, we are speaking about how to empower our audience using alternative narratives, which aim to promote positive messages, universal values, or even role models. So in this occasion, as the same that we did during the last webinar, we will use the RANS Gamma model. And we will be focused today on identifying which is the proper message, which is the proper messenger, and also we will spend some time addressing the needs of a proper action. But first of all, the audience. I wanted to share with you today a screen that is being shared not only by RAN, but also by other organizations like ISD and even others. And here you can find several questions that you really need to answer before you start defining your goal, your message, your messenger, or even your action. You need to have the best possible knowledge of your audience. In case you are not able to answer these questions, you are not prepared to design, deliver, or even implement your communication campaign. So you need to spend a lot of time making your research, answering this question, and also involving some members of your target audience in this process. This is something very important that I will repeat several times along the presentation, along the webinar, but you really need to be able to answer these questions. Now, the message. We need to deliver a message that is relevant, that resonates with our audience. How can we know if our message is relevant or resonates with our audience? Because we have firstly made a research and we know the answers. We know what is relevant for our target audience. We also need to assume this local approach. We need to take advantage of our knowledge of the local needs. We already know, because we have made a very deep research on the local needs, what is important for our local audience, what are the perceived or not perceived grievances, and most important, which are the local resilience factors. An additional point, also very important, is to try to deliver a sort of social currency when we are designing this message. What do I mean when I am relating to the social currency? We need to identify which is the additional benefit for our audience in case they decide to interact with us. It can be why did they decide to share our content, our video, why they do decide to interact with us. Maybe because they will look smarter with their friends, or maybe because they will look socially committed, or maybe because they will look funny. We need to identify that additional social currency so we can improve this interaction. Don't forget, no monologues. We need to interact with them. People, our audience, hate to be lectured. We need to start speaking with people and not speaking to people. That's why it's so important to involve members of our audience in our team, delivering and designing the message. So the target audience becomes not only a recipient of our message and our campaign, but also a creator. Constant stream of content. We need, in this case, quality is not so important, even though I'm sure that you already know very well-funded projects, very technically with a high technical quality, but videos that are not being shared. So in this case, if we want our audience to interact with us, if we want our audience to collaborate with us, we need to provide them with a constant stream of content. In this case, authenticity and quantity are more important always than quality. Test your message. That's again something that I said. We need to involve members of our audience in our team so we can test our message. We cannot dare to upload our content, to start sharing our message before we have tested it beforehand. And it's a very easy way just to show our message, to show our video, to show our product to some members of our audience target and see which are their feedback, their reactions, or even whether there's a chance of improvement. Which are the possible approaches? Once we have identified the story that we want to share with our target audience, we can try to deconstruct, discredit, and demystify discriminatory, xenophobic, or extremist messages with facts, using facts. We can also try to make an emotional appeal to the audience to consider the impact of discrimination, hate speech, xenophobia, and violence. In this case, when we are trying to make this emotional appeal, the use of the proper music is very important, the use of the proper images, the use of the proper messenger, as we will see immediately after this slide. We can also have a different approach. We can use humor, okay, trying to undermine these narratives through humor, always trying to offer a positive alternative message of narrative. But there's something important that I want to share with you. We should never forget that we can use explicit messages to already convince populations. Confrontational messages with not convinced auditions, because that's the backfire effect. I mean, this is really, really important. Sometimes when we are using these confrontational approaches with audiences that are not convinced, we can generate this backfire effect. So this population, these audiences can feel attacked, can feel that we are attacking their core values, or can feel that we are attacking their identity principles as individuals or as a community. So be aware of that backfire effect. And always be aware of the characteristics of your audience, of their age, of their language, of their interests. How can we do this? By answering all the questions that we were mentioning when we spoke about the need to deliver a good research, the need to spend a lot of time answering to those questions related to the audience. And this is the first example that I wanted to bring today as one of the possible approaches that we can use. I'm not sure, probably some of you know of this campaign, okay? The Sun, you know, this tablet, they shared with their audience this front page, and in the headline, as you can read, is 1 in 5 Brit Muslims sympathy for jihadis. It's at least kind of shocking, okay? It's allegedly based on a survey that they took on their audience, okay? The political reaction was huge against this medium, against the paper, the newspaper, against this front page, and also the reaction of traditional and social media. But what is most important, Twitter generated one of the most successful campaigns ever, and was this, 1 in 5 Muslims. So lots of hilarious tweets from Muslim people and non-Muslim people about prejudices, about stereotypes related to Muslim population were posted. So, using humor, they were deconstructing and ridiculing not only the medium, but the message, the front page, the headline. So, as you can see here, 1 in 5 Muslims for Islam's under yellow years, or even 1 in 5 Muslims are undercover superheroes. This is really good one. Force 1 in 5 Muslims for their pets to wear modest Islamic clothing. And lots of them. So why I wanted to bring this campaign and this approach, why I wanted to share it with you today, because the messengers have the complete credibility. Most of them, or lots of them, are Muslims too. They are also using these approaches, using humor to ridicule the medium as the paper, the sun, but also the message and even the approach, the serious approach that they were supposed to have used to share this front page. So this is a good example of using the humor as an approach, and this is a good one. This campaign was launched by Exit Deutschland, which is an excellent NGO fighting far-right extremism, and it's funded by former extremists and by other members of the community. So this was the first involuntary online charity campaign. So they created microsites, and they use as a main site a Facebook page. They counted with collaborators, with supporters, and with donors. So every time one of the collaborators, one of the supporters found a hate comment, okay, a discriminatory comment, a comment related to far-right extremism, they posted, and they could select one of the answers that the page that Donate the Hate campaign provided them with. In the same way, one of the donators immediately funded the campaign and funded this campaign, and also a different project supporting refugees with €1 per comment that have been identified and have been answered. So the haters, if we want to use that word, were involuntarily donating €1 to this campaign, to a campaign focused on supporting refugees. So as you can see, it's innovative. The cost is really reduced. Just in case you want to try something similar, the donors were the Facebook company and also TV and radio stations. So I wanted to bring this today because I want to highlight the importance of trying to collaborate with different stakeholders. In this case, with big companies, but also with other sort of stakeholders. I brought today also a new case. Probably some of you are familiar with it. And even when this project is not a communication campaign, it has a really strong message that in case we want to use it, or we want to use a similar approach, adding the proper messenger or in the proper medium, or even a call to action, it can be really effective. But now, for us to be able to analyze a possible approach, I think it's interesting for us to have a look at it. Okay. Now, okay, as I told you before, it's quite interesting, this approach, because as we mentioned, they are using facts, as the video is just showing the results of an academic research project, but it's also using an emotional appeal. Think about the messengers, the kids, think about the music, think about all the environment. So even as I told you, when this is not a communication campaign by itself, it's an excellent example of the use of this approach. Facts plus an emotional appeal. How we can do this? In some cases, we will need, as I told you before, we need of the collaboration of the academia, of our research institute, but without any doubt, the results can be really interesting for us and for the audience too. Let's go now with the messenger. We know that we need a credible voice. And how can we know that our messenger is perceived as a credible voice for our target audience? The answer, I think, it's really easy, because we have previously spent a lot of time answering to the questions related to the audience. So we will know who is a credible voice, who is interesting for them, who is not, who will never, they will believe to. So we need to identify someone our audience can relate to, someone who speaks the same language. And who can be these potential messengers? We can work with victims of hate crimes, victims of hate speech, victims of discrimination, also with former haters, former extremists, with celebrities, with influencers, also with community leaders or community members, and also with respected organizations and respected charities. I mean, sometimes the messenger is not an individual, it's an organization by itself. We will see that there are several really powerful campaigns where the messenger is the organization by itself. Some tips to take into consideration. The first of them, when we are identifying the proper messenger and we are starting working with them. First of them is the security issues. We need to answer to this question. Is our organization prepared with this sort of security risks? Do we want our messenger to face this sort of security risks? So we need to make a little research on this, which are the possibilities, and we will be our strategies to deal with these security risks. Victims and farmers, they need to have a specific approach. In the case of victims, it's crucial that we avoid any sort of secondary victimization related or caused by the involvement of these victims in our communication campaign. So first of all, we need to make a kind of previous assessment and being sure that they can relate to our audience. So even the content of their speech, of their message must have a really local approach, and they must be perceived as credible voices too. Related to farmers, they also need to have a specific approach. First of all, because we need to be sure that the re-radicalization process is complete. I mean, we cannot assume the risk of having a messenger that has not abandoned the extremist ideologies. And the second point is quite interesting because we need to be sure that the protagonism lies on the campaign, on the message, and not on the messenger. So sometimes when we involve some former extremists, they assume the protagonism and the role is even more relevant than the message by itself. So be sure that your campaign is defined so that the protagonism and the attention of the audience relies on the campaign, on the message, and not on the messenger. And finally, the involvement of communities, the involvement of members of your audience. I told you before that that was something that I would repeat lots of times because that's key. We need to involve members of the target audience in the team. Or if we are not going to do it, we need to test it. In any case, I think that during the fourth webinar that will be focused on the evaluation and the monitoring activities, you will have the opportunity to go deeper on these topics, but also try to test everything, message, messenger, even the action when you if you have the possibility to involve members of your target audience. Sorry. This is a different example that I wanted to bring today, and this is linked to the credibility of organizations. And also, this is an excellent example of a really well-targeted campaign. It's linked or it's focused on the boosting the awareness of the society related to the inclusion of the workplace. So let me share it with you. Okay. As I said before, this is an excellent example of a campaign produced by a company. Okay, it's the RBC. RBC, for those of you who don't know it, it's a big bank. It's based in Canada. It's also based in the States and in other places, and it's being highly rated as a really good place to work. So this is a credible organization, okay? Credible organization for their workers. And this campaign is targeting their own workers, their RBC's workers, so their client, their intern clients. And why this is so important? Because all the video is targeting them. I mean, when these workers, when this target audience is watching at this video, they can feel recognized. They can see all the situations that are familiar to them, mostly on a daily basis. They can see even the clothes, even the way they are moving, even the presentations, or as I said before, the situation. So it's a really well-targeted campaign, which counts on the credibility of this organization in front of the real target audience. So for those of you who are interested in delivering this sort of campaigns aiming at inclusion at the workplace, sometimes it's important to realize who is the real target audience and to test it with the people that we are asking to have a behavioral change. And again, try to explore possible collaborations with different stakeholders. In this case, RBC, but there are other local companies which would be more than happy to collaborate in this sort of projects, not only in terms of funding, but in terms of exploring other possible ways to collaboration, sometimes even linked to the corporate social responsibility area. So that's my suggestion for you in case you want to start working on this field. And finally, we need to address the call to action. We know that that's different from the message. The message is the story that we want to share with our audience. The message is counts on the local factors. It's counting also on the perceived grievances or even on the interests of the target audience. But the call to action is a petition to interact with us. So we are looking for the online or offline behavioral change. To achieve this, we need to use strong command verbs to introduce our call to action. It must be simple. We need to use words that provoke emotional responses, addressing people directly, give a reason why people should do what we are asking them to do. Again, remember the social currency, which is the benefit that they will get, the additional benefit that they will get from being involved and to respond to this call to action. Remember, it can be that they will look funny or smarter, or that they will look even socially committed. Okay, it might be adjusted to the medium. Think about the first campaign, 1 in 5 Muslims. It was within the Twitter environment. The action was really clear, but think about other possible actions, as in this case, the last example that we saw related to the RBC campaign. The call to action was speak up. Okay, so there are lots of examples. We need also to check it with your audience in the same way that we have already checked the goal, the message, the messenger, and now the action in both members of our target audience in our team. And let's see the last example, the last case that I wanted to share with you today. Okay, I think that this was a good example to share with you, just to have a good way of finalizing this webinar. If you think for a moment that this campaign is probably one of the ones that have the greatest results in terms of a counter-extremism campaign. It was delivered, but again, Exit Deutschland. It's a really local campaign with a local approach, with a local message and local messengers. The results were incredible, as you have seen. And take notes about the differences between the message and the call to action. The message is, if your teacher can do it, you can do it too. But the action was really easy. The action was, contact us, you can do it too. So I just wanted to share with you this last example. I really hope that it was helpful. And in case you have any questions, I will be really glad to answer to them. For those of you who are interested in some of the concepts that we were addressing during the first slides at the beginning of the webinar, please let me remind you that you can find all the information in the videos that EFUS already uploaded and in the presentations that can also be at your in case you want them. I think that EFUS can provide them to you. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Maria, for this interesting presentation. I think you went over very important concepts, but also giving very practical recommendations to really dedicate time I think one of the main points is to really dedicate time to know your target, to understand the dynamics, and this is the key for success afterwards for the campaign. So this helps us to understand that all the steps before the actual product or the actual campaign are really, really important, and they have to be taken into account, and not only just the product, the video or the poster itself, but really this preparatory work that has to be done. So thank you again for reminding us of this important concept.
Remember this deep analysis about who is the people that resonates with our audience, who is important for them, who is relevant. So once we have identified them, we need to be sure that the way they are delivering our message, or even their presence in our campaign, is not overlapping our own message or even our main goal. So I think it's kind of sensitive, but again, we can be sure if we previously tested with some members of the audience.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Thank you very much for answering these questions, and also thank you our participants to ask and promote the exchange. I see that some people has raised their hands. I invite you to write your answer by using the chat, and we will try to respond to your answer in this week or beginning of the next one. I would like to close because I think we are already in time to close our second webinar, but not before to mention it that we will have the third session next 20th of May at 11 a.m. This session will be, we will have an expert from the Institute for Strategical Dialogue, ISD, is Kelsey Vionsgaard, who will provide us with a presentation on how to create an effective campaign, reach the target group and spread the message, how to make your campaign more attractive to a target group audience, and how to enhance the effectiveness of your message. Also, I would like to let you know that EFUS is organizing some kind of web conference, some debates on all issues, all security issues emerge from the COVID-19 situation. This web conference are a debate, are more interactive sessions in which we invite our participants to share with us experience in specific topics, how they are handling with the situation, the current situation. And the next session will be tomorrow. We will talk about the change and the evolution of the criminality in the cities and how different municipality services have to respond to that to those changes. This session are all Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. And you can find all the information in our website. Also, I would like to remind you that help us to get better, and don't forget to fill up the survey. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you all to be here. And we hope to see you next in next session. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.